Right, well, I've just clicked record. Actually, I think it's recording. Amazing. And when I've finished, I'll upload it onto the page. Highly technical stuff, of course. Let's see, wait a minute. We'll see if I can. There's stop button. Push stop.
Hello and welcome to a very important episode of Train Talk. We've covered some serious safety and operational issues for you on this program, but none more so than the two topics we've got in this episode. First up, helping drivers cope with the effects and aftermath of fatalities, including suicide. Assistance is there.
It's very significant. It impacts not only on the individual driver, but it also impacts on other drivers, on other staff members.
Some drivers tell their story and how they've coped to inspire and support others.
We've got a society there that are hurting, and they're going to make foolish decisions. And often it's a decision they can't take back.
I've accepted that suicides are a fact of life. And you have no say in the matter. It's the only say you have in it is after the event and how you deal with it.
And prioritising tasks to prevent distractions and lapses in concentration. We hear from you and a human factors expert.
Prioritising tasks is probably one of the most important factors of a driver's job.
It's critically important to not let yourself be taken away from the task of driving.
Our first story is never an easy one to talk about. It's an unwanted, unfortunate and often unavoidable aspect of the job for drivers. How to cope with the effects of fatalities, including suicides, that are an all too regular occurrence. We know it causes stress and emotional trauma for all involved, and sometimes the public coverage of this says little about how a driver feels, which we intend to discuss in the interests of driver welfare. If for any reason this subject is too confronting, please spool through to the next story. You're departing or approaching a platform, or you're near a level crossing, or coming round a curve. You've got your train under control. You're alert and situationally aware. In fact, you're doing everything right and being an absolute professional driver. Suddenly though, you're involved in a fatality or suicide, and there's nothing more you could have done to prevent it. It's what happens next and how you manage yourself that counts. Getting coping strategies, help and advice, because it is on hand and because you probably need it.
One of the interesting things about drivers is that they sort of split into little groups of 30 or 40, and you'll find that if a driver's involved in a significant incident, fatality, near miss or a collision, you get phone calls from other drivers within that small group. And it's really important that happens because they're talking about things that they've been through. They know what the driver's feeling. It's also important for the driver to go home and talk to family. Moods are going to change, behaviour is going to change, and they need to know why that is. And when people understand and know why it's happening, then it's much easier to deal with. It'll come out in a whole range of ways if you bottle it up.
Robert Aquilina has years of driving experience to his name, and he's been involved in 4 suicides. He says every driver handles these situations differently, but they must find ways to deal with it.
The help is there, and there's help in all sorts of ways. You can get it from, obviously, from your employer, you can get it from your friends, or you can get it from other... There are services around to help with this. So that my advice to other drivers is seek out the help you required and the type of help you require depending on how you're coping with the event. It's not a nice thing to talk about. That person's made a decision to end their life, and you can't change that. You can never change it. So you've just got to say to yourself, well, I'm the one that was involved, I'm the one that has to deal with it, and I'm the one that's going to get on with my life and move on and not let this perturb me too much from my future direction, and that is to stay on the job and drive trains.
it's very necessary to talk, for people to come out and talk about it and not be afraid, not to tuck it away in the back and say, well, I'm not allowed to talk about that because society doesn't talk about it. Well, I think we do need to talk about it, and the driver needs to talk about it. And the driver's a victim here. The person that's dead might be a victim, but the driver's also a victim.
It's something that's not discussed very often, and a lot of other drivers don't talk about it. And look, if I've got the opportunity to help someone else, if it only helps one person, it's all worth it. And that's the reason I want to do it. I want to help one person and hopefully more. It's always good to get advice from someone that's been through it.
Rainer Jungbauer says sometimes the trauma and emotion of these unwanted tragedies is so great that you may not even be aware of it. Like most drivers, Rainer's had some pretty frightening near misses, but he has luckily managed to avoid fatalities. However, he's known lots of workmates who haven't, and he still vividly remembers what happened to one mate.
The last incident he had, he thought he was okay until the station master came to the door and lifted his hand off the whistle. He literally had to take his hand off the whistle, and the whistle had been blowing now for 3 or 4 minutes, and the whole time he thought he was okay. I think you definitely need to talk it out. You know, anything you bottle up in life will come to haunt you, okay? You might think you're brave and bottling things in and in and in, and I've known in life people who bottle up anger, for argument's sake, will eventually explode. And it'll happen at a time they least expect it to someone who least deserves it. But if you talk about your problems or situations, you're letting them out, you're letting them go. You've got to talk them through. You've got to close the chapter on it, and then make it a clear decision that, you know, you've got to do the job the best you can after that.
Everyone you speak to about this issue is in agreement. Drivers can't blame themselves.
But, you know, if you're doing your job and you're doing your job correctly, there is nothing that you could blame yourself for. But the answer is that you've got to do your job correctly.
They do blame themselves at times because they carry it around with them. They don't tell you sometimes, they don't, you know, acknowledge it, or they won't, you know, exhibit it, or you know, say, gee, you know, I feel guilty for what happened. But they do carry a guilt with them at times, and it's really not their fault.
So it's about taking a positive action to help yourself and your workmates. It's taking that first step, knowing assistance is there should you need it.
Talk to your partner, talk to your friends, and let them know. I think talking is a really important thing. I'm on a 24-hour call. People want to talk to me, they give me a ring, we meet, have a coffee, whatever, go to their home, whatever they want to do, whatever they see as important, then it's important. And I follow it up and talk to them. And if we need to go elsewhere, then I'll organise for them to go elsewhere. But it's important if someone feels bad, doesn't matter when it is, doesn't matter what time it is, what day it is, they should be contacting someone to talk to, and I'm available to do that.
Special thanks to Robert, Rainer and Wes for coming forward to share their views.
Hello, my name's Barry Lurs. I've been on the job since 1964, and on diesels and sparks I noticed that at level crossings, if you can slow the train down going over when you've got another train coming towards you, you can potentially avoid another fatality, because people tend to want to come out behind the second train or the first train, and the second train is involved in it. So if you can help your workmates out by just sort of thinking about that in advance when approaching level crossings, that would probably be one of my major tips.
There's an order and a routine to driving that you as professionals maintain. It keeps you on your game in a safety critical environment. But introduce distractions or carry out tasks of lesser priority and it can lead to an operational incident. I spoke with Metro's human factors specialist, Ruben Delamore, about this concept, and his interview begins our coverage.
If you don't attend to what you're doing, and if you rely on your habitual sort of way of doing things, whilst more often than not you're going to be fine, there may be that one occasion where it doesn't sit right, you get it wrong, and the consequences unfortunately can be quite catastrophic, because the beast of a machine that the guys are driving and ladies are driving is pretty unforgiving in relations of just simple physics. You know, if you all of a sudden rationalise, oh crikey, you know, I was supposed to be a hell of a lot slower for this bend, well, by the time that you realise that, it's too late. If your head is not in the right place to start off with, and if you are focusing on other aspects, and historically you talk about financial stress and relationship bust-ups or whatever, you have got a huge risk of actually missing something incredibly important that you should react to.
Of course, prioritising tasks is also about understanding how our brains and memories function, and their capacity to recall and sort information. Our long-term memory has limitless capacity and is used to store information such as route knowledge and operational procedures. Because it takes time and effort to force information to enter here, it's only occasionally used for train driving and yard operations. So we must therefore rely on our short-term memory as a temporary buffer zone to record recent events and relevant information that affects how a situation should be handled in the immediate future.
Your brain is trying to filter out so many aspects of data, and it doesn't actually have the physical capability to, you don't have the physical ability to attend to every single piece of data that's coming through. So it's got a mechanism, a safeguard to prevent you going completely potty by determining what's relevant, what's not. So if your head's not in the right space to start off with, if you're attending to other stuff outside of the task at hand, which is very, very easy to do, you are likely to miss something that's hugely relevant. Mindfulness is another term they use for it, but it's basically, it's more than situational awareness, because you can be situationally aware but you're still not actually actively motivated or have your head in the right space to actually do anything about it, or do the right thing about it. So you have to be mindful of the task that you're undertaking, because that helps to manage, for want of a better term, that re-attention or distraction to other stimulus.
So we've got some of the concepts, but what do you think? And importantly, what do you do to maintain the focus to help prevent SPADs and other incidents?
So we got a few distractions today, Sally, with that little child crying at the back there. How do you zone out? How do you prioritize what you need to focus on?
I guess it's you've got to multitask when you're a driver, but the main thing, the priority is to look at your signals, look at your signal aspects,
That's right.
and look at the track ahead and make sure there's no obstructions, no persons near the track. And just make sure you're driving in a manner where you can stop if you need to all the time.
That's right. Yeah.
Safety critical. Your most important factor is you drive your train in accordance with the rules and regulations. It doesn't mean that you answer the phone while you're coming into the platform. It doesn't mean that you're out there looking at a lovely passenger as you're coming into the platform. Your first job is you make sure that you are doing what you have been trained to do. If you stick to your rules and regulations of what you have been trained, you will not get yourself into trouble.
Well, it's extremely important when it comes to safe working and signals and so forth, particularly when you're running on restrictive aspect signals, because the slightest thing that distracts you could have serious consequences.
It's just a matter of keeping your attention focused on the task at hand, making sure that you're taking notice of the most important things, and the most important thing you're doing is driving that train. Coming out of platforms, coming into platforms, approaching signals, anywhere where you're around track gangs, anything like that, it's really important that you're maintaining focus on the actual task of driving.
When I'm sort of approaching a yellow or any restrictive speed signal, anything I'm doing, if there's radio communication, I terminate it straight away. I have nothing to distract me, my concentration on that particular signal. The only thing that would take me away from that would be someone, say, crossing the track. That would then up the priority for obvious reasons, because it's the thing that I'm going to try and avoid. Because although you might think that you can concentrate on two things, it could be the slightest thing that could take your mind off something, and then bang, you've tripped past that signal. So I don't want to be in that position.
We've had quite a few instances where people have let themselves be distracted by other tasks, such as being distracted by trackside events, and that's resulted in them just even slightly misjudging a signal, but that's the end result, regardless of how small it is, it's still a SPAD.
Okay, well, first I'd be observing my signal aspects, and I'd be driving in a manner that I could slow down and stop safely at the station. Of course, paying attention to people on the platform.
Good.
Just generally being observant of what's going on around me, but...
That's good. A bit of situational awareness, ensuring that you've released your doors, your passengers are getting on, then you're concerned about your signal ahead. Has it been placed to proceed?
No one comes to work with the intention of making a violation. Mistakes happen, people are human, but we can minimise all that purely and simply by paying attention to the most important tasks we have.
Everything can wait until you are stationary, you are safe. If you come to an outstation and you're going to change ends, if you've got time, by all means, contact the appropriate personnel. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to give you a ring earlier on. I was busy, I was driving. Now I've got a few minutes, I'll tell you what's going on. That's it. Just concentrate on what you're doing, what's in front of you, and everything will be fine. And if you forget what's in front of you, for goodness sakes, don't keep on doing the track speed. Slow down, go around the corner, have a look and see, make sure your section ahead is clear, can continue on to your journey.
You just got to remain focused. That's got to be the clear focus and your goal, is that next signal and bringing the train to a safe stand before that next particular signal.
We appreciate all the comments in that story and hope that you found it informative. Please, keep your story ideas coming. They do get taken up on the program. Until next time, stay safe and we'll see you on the job.